we have to walk by faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always what you see. Standing at the top of that airplane and looking down, it was like, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into? But the blessing in it for me is the walk of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Not always knowing, but trusting the process.
Greetings. Welcome to Life Empowered Living. It is such an honor to be here with you on today. I am so excited to be here, and I have this amazing human sitting next to me on today, Thaddeus Hannah. Welcome, Thaddeus.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
There are so many things when I think of you that I think of. Amazing, talented, gifted, multi-talented, a heart for everything that you do. But tell me something that most people don't know about you.
Well, first, I appreciate all of those kind words. I don't know if that's totally true, but I definitely appreciate it. I would say what most people probably don't know about me is I'm probably more introverted than most individuals would think.
Hmm.
I'm not an individual that really, though I'm always up in front of people talking and usually at different social gatherings, I like to be to myself a lot. I enjoy spending time with that. And I actually get kind of nervous when I have to do a lot of those things. So most people will be like, wow, that doesn't sound like you, but that's 100% the case.
I love that. I think that sometimes the work that we do requires us to step out of our comfort zone and norm. And speaking of comfort zone and norm, over the last several years, you've went through a lot of different changes, right? You went from a single man to a married man, now a married man to a father. And in addition to that, you had career changes, you got degrees. I mean, a lot has happened in the last few years. How have you navigated that?
This is true. I like to always say life is always lifing. And as long as life is lifing, that means I'm doing something right. Because once
Mm,
life stops, everything stops, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So I've enjoyed really just the challenges of life. I look at it as a journey,
mm-hmm,
and just really continuing to figure out what that looks like for Thaddeus every single day. From, like you said, switching different careers,
mm-hmm.
obtaining my master's degree from Concordia in organizational leadership, um, getting married, now having a baby. It's been awesome. But I think for me, remembering what my core values are and
Mm.
continuing to stay rooted in what's important to me has helped me be, I would say, successful or at least definitely focused on the things that are most valued.
I love that. And so, wow, I mean, you said a mouthful, so I have three questions all at once in my head right now. So let me ask you the first one, which is, it sounds like you've moved into all of these changes with really excitement and joy, and that helps, right? And so my question is around that, you've moved into them, but what are some things that you've learned as you've navigated through?
I've learned a lot more about that.
Okay.
I've continued to sometimes I ministered a message not too long ago. I serve as an associate pastor at my church, and I had the opportunity to minister a message, and it was called "I've Got to Keep Going."
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to focus on what's not going right. It's easy for Thaddeus to focus on all of the issues,
Mm-hmm.
but when you look at things, they're not as bad as
Mm-hmm.
you may think they are. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always gotten to a point, especially more so now in my later years in life, of always reminding myself, Thad, you got this.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to keep focused. You
Mm-hmm.
have to remember why you do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as I continue to just, they say don't talk to yourself, but I do it just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
As I talk to myself and really encourage myself, has really been some of my driving pieces that has helped me really navigate some of the hills, some of the valleys.
And so you mentioned talking to yourself as a strategy to help you navigate. What are some other things that you've done to help drown out the negative things that you could say to yourself? Or I say to myself, because it's an issue.
I think it's about community for one,
Mm,
being very conscious of the individuals that you have surrounding you,
mm-hmm,
having individuals, and you're one of them. I can think of times that I've called you with this and that. And you'll say, now, what are you going to do about it? That's not what I want to hear a lot. Generally, I want you to say, that doesn't make sense. And I agree with you, Thaddeus. But challenging yourself to have people in your circle that are going to hold you accountable, that are going to help you make it to the next level. So I would definitely say the people that I have surrounding me help make me a better person. Prayer is huge. And then also making a strategy. I write a lot of things down to help myself remember this is what you need to get done. Sometimes priorities change and I have to move things around on the list, but it's still, I look at myself like a GPS system. I might have to regroup, I might have to reroute, but I'm still trying to get to the destination. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. The destination hasn't changed. Wow. Okay, so tell me about Thaddeus. We jumped in with where you are and how you got there, but tell me about you. What were the experiences that got you to the point where you can emphatically say what you're saying to me now?
Life is a journey. So specifically, I think about even when I first started in corporate America, if I can use that as an example. I worked in retail really all of my life. I worked for Walgreens for 11 years, and you couldn't tell me that Thaddeus was not going to own a Walgreens. It was supposed to say Thaddeus is on the building. And it was something I enjoyed doing. I love meeting people. I love engaging with individuals. So for me, even during that season of my life, priorities changed. My life had begun to change during the time I was working at Walgreens. And I said, I have to figure out something else that will allow me to have that work-life balance. Maybe not fully balanced, but where it's not totally, off kilter, off balance. So I then found another niche that made me happy. So I work in banking now. And working in banking, I always say retail it's the same whether we're selling a credit card or we're selling tissue. It's the same thing. So having the opportunity to really think about what made sense for me, what makes Thaddeus happy. A lot of times we do things just because that's what we need to do. But I think for me, life, what has helped me really navigate is looking at what's important to you, important to me as an individual, and really driving to those results. So when I think about when I switched careers, I gave the example of how important Walgreens was to me. You may be thinking, it's just a retail store, but it was something that I enjoyed doing. So when I had to pivot and figure out something else where I could have that work-life balance, not working, 12, 14 hours a day, I decided to go into banking. The beauty in banking is we're closed almost every federal holiday, right? So it gave me that work-life balance. And then we're done with work generally at 5 p.m. Now, yes, there may be things that come afterwards, but for me, it was what works for me. So allowing myself to be okay with change, to be okay with reprioritizing what's important as it relates to my job, but still keeping the focus on these are things that Thad wants to do. And that's really what I feel has helped me be successful or helped me really navigate sometime what the new norm is.
I love that. And, you mentioned Walgreens, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was thinking about you in preparation for this time together, I thought about all the people that you brought along with you who also worked at Walgreens, and they were there because of you. And one of the things that you just said was that you are very conscious about who you put in your circle. So my question to you is, how do you decide who you bring with you and who you leave behind, quote unquote?
I like that. I personally believe everybody has value. I personally feel that everyone has potential, but it's up to you if you want to live in that value and potential that you have. So I've had many individuals, particularly even when I worked at Walgreens, who have reached out to me and said, Thad, I need a job. I've had parents reach out to me saying, my son or daughter need a job. For me, it was more important than the parents reaching out. What do I see these individuals doing in their day to day? Because anyone that I bring on, you're a representation of me.
Right.
So I want to challenge that status quo of that's just going to help them get a job. No, you're going to get yourself the job. I'll help open the door, but it's entirely up to you how you walk through that door. So how do you show up in those moments? Not necessarily for an interview, but when you're out in the community, when you're out serving, maybe it's at school, whatever that is, how do you show up? And if I can see that you're showing up the right way, then I'm all for helping you. Now, if you don't show up the right way, I'll be more than happy to coach you. I actually just had a conversation the other day with a leader in the company that I work for, and they told me that they could not make a decision because the individual does not have the experience needed. And I said, well, I struggle with that. And if anybody knows that, I have no issue with pushing back if it doesn't make sense to me. And I said, well, I believe that you can train a person on products and services. You can't, in my opinion, train a person on really how to have people skills, how to be a good leader, how to lead with compassion. Either you have it or you don't. Sometimes it just becomes a front, and eventually what's in you is going to come out of you. So for me, even in that case, if it's an individual that I can see the potential in and they're showing me they want it, I want you with me because I believe we're helpers one to another. We're better together. And it's really, setting those standards so that individuals know that not going to be okay with that, or vice versa.
I love that. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Since you're comfortable with pushing back, I want to push back just a little bit here.
Okay.
My personal belief is that there's no such thing as balance. I believe that in life we have rhythm. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's faster, it's slower, but there is no such thing as balance. I believe that when something is completely balanced, it's stagnant and ultimately it's dead because it's not moving. If you think about a pendulum and it's moving back and forth, the minute that it's fully balanced, it's not moving. And so when you talk about work-life balance, I know what your intent is, but I want to ask you, do you believe that you've ever fully experienced work-life balance?
So as I said that, because I am a Celeste Cuffie follower, I said she's going to challenge me on this. And I do believe that there is a such thing as work-life balance. But when I think of work-life balance as an example, my family's always going to come first. Work is here, right? But if there's a situation where family's up here and work's all the way down here, we got to figure out something because you still have a responsibility. We're still accountable to the organizations that we serve. We're still accountable to our loved ones and things like that. So when I say work-life balance, it's important to me. So for example, I lead a team right now, and I have an individual who has shared with me that, they've got this and that going on in their life right now. For me, it's important that they take that time to spend with their family. If you need to have me fill in for a couple calls for you or whatever that looks like, let's figure out what that looks like. Because if you're not healthy to take care of your job, I'm doing you a disservice.
Absolutely.
Family is important. You need to make sure that they're good on that end so that you can be your best version of yourself. So when I think of work-life balance, it's really what is balanced for you. Does that make sense? How does that look for Thaddeus? As long as the family's taken care of, as long as home is taken care of, work is however that looks. But I agree, it's not going to always be, straight.
Even across,
line.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I love that. And you explained it perfectly well, which actually takes me now to my next question. How do you define success?
That's a loaded question. Success to me is really, what are the goals that you've set for yourself or for the organization or whatever it is, and how do you achieve them?
Okay.
I don't think there is, and the reason I say it's a loaded question is because success can be defined in multiple different ways. But for myself, I am an individual, and that's why I look at myself like a GPS system, constantly rerouting, constantly navigating to figure out how I'm going to get to the destination. As long as I make it, and me and my wife, she's always telling me which way to go. Honey, you should go this way. But I'm like, love, if I go this way, we still gonna get there, right? I think it's understanding the destination and where we're going. And for me, that's how I define did I meet the mark?
Mm-hmm.
Did I hit the goal?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, be okay with regrouping to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what you need to do
Mm-hmm.
to get to where you're going. I'm not an individual that gives up very easily. I'm generally going to keep asking, keep trying
Mm-hmm.
to figure out a better way,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe not a better way, but you know, well, I will say a better way. I have a friend that always tells me there's a more excellent way. That how
Mm-hmm.
can we do it?
Mm-hmm.
So really making sure that you're focused on what that more excellent way looks like helps me from a successful standpoint feel like we're getting to that goal.
I love that. And so when you think about, I love the terminology, a more excellent way. I remember in corporate America, and I would be working on projects or reports, and it would be like, it felt like forever tweaking. And at some point, one of my managers said to me, this is good enough. And I kind of looked like I've never heard anybody say it's good enough, inferring that some things will never be perfect. So, how do you manage the drive to be excellent with the knowledge that things will never be perfect?
That's good. Perfect and good enough, I struggle with because I'm a firm believer in give it everything you got.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I do, I try to give it 199%. So I guess for me, as long as I can say that and this sounds cliche, but we've dotted all of our I's.
Mm-hmm.
We've looked at every opportunity. We've crossed all of our T's, and we've looked at, what is the problem? What is our solution? If we're
Mm-hmm.
working on a project, did we do just enough to get by, or was there opportunity of what we could have done differently?
Mm-hmm.
I'm always challenging the individuals that I work with to say, did you look at it from this perspective?
Mm-hmm.
How can we, do this, but make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think if we can legitimately say we've given it all that we can, that's good enough for me. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
No, I think that that's really good. I think about that conversation that I had with my manager often because I am a bit of a perfectionist. And I just remember, and even now in the work that funny story, I am the last book that I wrote, The Risk to Be Great, I just came here and I did it in audio. So it's an audio version. It should be dropping very soon. But part of the conversation that Elsie, the proprietor here, said to me, he said, "You're going to always find something wrong. So just be aware. And if you keep picking it apart, it'll never be done." So much so, he listened to it and uploaded it. And I was like, "Hey, aren't I supposed to look at it first or listen to it first?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah." And so he sent it to me after he had, audited, cleaned it up and everything. So I was like, I guess it's good, good enough because he knew how I would handle
Right,
it.
right.
And so, I think about in the work that you do and the work that I do, our drive to have that excellence. And sometimes even that, I don't know, could it be a detriment or are we setting people up for failure, right? I think of you specifically and how hard I see you work on a consistent basis. And I said, he makes this look easy. So it's easy for others to look at what you do and critique it because it's like, oh, I could do that. But they don't know all of the tentacles and pieces behind what you just did in that moment to make it look easy. And so, how do you handle that kind of situation where, because I know you get pushback, right? And probably from everywhere because you're doing it and you're making it look easy and you're doing it with grace and respect and kindness, but you get, I'm sure, a lot of additional commentary is what I'll call it.
Sure. I think specifically, I had an interview,
Mm-hmm.
and during the interview, the hiring manager asked me, "What is your biggest weakness?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Asking for help," because I would generally, I'll figure it out. I will
Mm-hmm.
get in the boat by myself, and I will go and figure it out. When you could have just asked for help, and been done with it 3 hours sooner. That's one of my biggest struggles. I like to figure it out. If I can't figure it out myself, I'm going to prolong the time until I have it right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think asking for help will be huge for me, but also when people push back and, challenge, maybe the way I do things, or I'm the type of individual, Thaddeus is not always right. So give me another solution.
Mm-hmm.
Help me think this through clearly. My biggest obstacle is individuals that always have pushback but never have anything to bring to the table
Mm-hmm.
to help give guidance, to help give a different type of strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's huge in making sure that I'm asking the right questions, listening to what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend always tells me that you need to listen to understand and not listen to respond.
Mm-hmm.
That is quick to, this is what I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not even finished with your sentence. And another individual told me, if I'm not done talking and you are responding, you're wrong. And I always remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to always think
Mm-hmm.
and hear what the individuals are telling me, so that if they are pushing back, you may be right.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, like I said, there's more than one way to get home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So thinking about what your struggles are as you are navigating, um, this life and living it with this joy and exuberance. What do you say to people that are struggling silently and they won't ask for help?
That's me sometimes, to be honest. But it's okay
Mm-hmm.
to ask for help. Find someone that you trust,
Mm-hmm.
someone that um, I'm big on the no judgment zone.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
This is a
it's,
safe place.
yes, this is a safe place. Find someone that you can talk to. Find someone that you can relate to,
Mm-hmm.
that you can articulate how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very important because, and like I said, I use you as an example. There's been many times I've called you with different things. You've never made me feel judged, or you've never made me feel like, Thaddeus, what are you talking about? You listen. And one thing that you do, you say, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm like, why is she doing that? But that's how I recognize that you're taking in and you're listening to what I'm saying. I think those are things that really help individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just need to have a ear that can hear what you're saying. And sometimes as you're talking things through, they might not even have to say anything. You're like, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what I need to do now. So really just finding that safe place
Mm-hmm.
of a person that you can speak to. One thing that my wife does, she tells me that she writes notes to God, and it's whatever she wants to say to him. I think those pieces are very important. Maybe you're not writing to God, but maybe you have a journal.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're documenting your thoughts and your feelings of what you're dealing with. Sometimes just getting it out can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. I love that so much. Writing notes to God. We should do that. I think that would be an amazing, amazing exercise. One of the things that in my role, and I do executive coaching for leaders, and one of the things when I went through my training to become a coach, they said that in every person that you talk to, you should be humble enough to see you in them. So I love that you said that when you know that people are struggling and they won't ask, sometimes that's you. It's definitely me. I laugh because I feel like I have IT support in the house, but sometimes I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And I'm so stressed. And it's like, I could just literally ask the question. And I'm like, no, I need to know this. And so the ability to see yourself and to be, to operate with the humility to see you so that you can be better for not only you, but for others it's just transformational. But now let's take this back a little bit further. Tell me about your support system. Tell me about your mom, your dad, your best friend.
I definitely have an amazing support system. My mom is a wonderful woman. She raised myself, my sister, for a little bit by herself, before she got married. And one thing that she instilled into us is, and I can still hear her saying it, Thaddeus, I don't condone that. And I'm like, okay, mama, I know. There was a lot of things where if she didn't agree with it,
Mhm.
she always still showed love. She
Mhm.
always still had that compassion, but I could still hear her voice. I don't condone that. And one thing about my mom, she always instilled values into us to let
Mhm.
us know that she's always there. She
Mhm.
always instilled into us, our faith,
Mhm.
a prayer life with God. So those things have been always very important to me. Even as I went through the different journeys
Mhm.
and things that I've gone through in life, I've always known that I've had that support system in Mama Bear.
Mhm.
We were blessed. We joined a church, Greater Mount Sinai, and I remember the first Sunday that we went there. It was an amazing, amazing service, and particularly there was a gentleman there. I leaned over to my mom. I said, "That's gonna be your husband," and she didn't pay me any attention. And we ended up talking a little bit more about it
Mhm.
later, and lo and behold, they ended up getting married.
Really?
And I call him dad. He's honestly the only dad that I've ever had known. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had other individuals who have been big brothers, who have been
Mhm.
father figures, but he's always been there.
Mhm.
He's, took on two additional children that
Mhm.
he didn't have to, and he loved us
Mhm.
like we were his own.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think from a support standpoint, when I think about even my dad, a man of faith, loving, caring, and even to this day, he's always that. What do you need? That
Mhm.
how can I help? We just had a beautiful, she's 9 months old, little girl, and even with that, he's right there in the mix.
Mhm.
When we needed breaks, he was coming over to spend time and give me and my wife a break
Mhm.
when Italy was first born. So definitely have an amazing support system. My sister and my brother, I have a sister and a brother. We just took a siblings trip. We went to Florida for a couple
Nice.
of days, and my mother always would tell us, "I want you all to have the best relationship."
Mhm.
I believe my daughter has kind of been that bridge because it's had the family around the clock
Mhm.
lately, just coming by, hanging out.
Mhm.
So it's gotten us closer. So I love the warmer weather. So in addition to hanging out with my brother and my sister, it was amazing just to get to Florida and have a good time.
Did you see any geckos?
There was a lot of them.
See, that right there, that's the deal breaker. I'm gonna stay right here in this cold Wisconsin weather for that reason and that reason alone. All right, so you have an amazing support system. You have a beautiful wife, an amazing baby. Um, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy for me, as I think about, um, I actually was talking to our son just, I think yesterday, about the importance of always doing the right thing, even when
Mm,
nobody's looking. Um, our son he's going to be 12 next week. And though I've shared that my stepfather has been there for
mhm,
me, I never had my biological dad. So our son he's dealing with some of the same things
mhm,
of not having his biological father there. So him and I, we resonate a lot with our feelings,
mhm,
looking at what he is dealing with.
mhm,
He reminds me so much of myself. So at moments when he is emotional with different things, I'm like, that's me. So I can understand and have that quality time with him to try to help will him back in.
mhm,
For me, legacy is not always about really what you leave behind. Some
mhm,
people will tell you, I want to leave, X amount of money for my children
mhm,
and houses and stocks and all of that. But for me, it's really, what do people say about you when you're gone?
mhm,
How do people feel about you? How did you make people feel when they were in your presence? And I shared the story of my son because I want to be the best dad
mhm,
that I never had.
mhm,
And I want to make it clear this is nothing at all against my stepfather who has been there, but from that biological
mhm,
standpoint, there are
mhm,
pieces where I legitimately want to fill in some of those gaps.
mhm,
I might not be able to do it completely because even for Kevin, he wasn't, he can never fill the gaps of my biological father.
mhm,
I might not be able to fill some of those gaps for Mikhail, but it's important to me that I do all I can
mhm,
to show him that I care, to show him that he is loved, to show him that he is valued. And I want my daughter to feel the same way.
mhm,
So I think legacy for me and what I would love to leave behind is really just making sure that my family is well taken care of.
Mhm.
I feel instilling those values into them. If nobody else tells you that you're beautiful, your
Mhm.
dad did. If
Mhm.
nobody else told you that you can be the next president of the United States, you got it. You got it right here at
Mhm.
home
Mhm.
first, and really help them with that journey, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that. I often say that legacy isn't just when you pass away, it's when you leave a room. What do they say about you when you've walked out of that office, right? Um, and sometimes I watched a clip earlier today, and it was a married couple, and he was a pastor or man of God of some sort, and he was talking about the impact that he had on the stage, yet he couldn't have a decent conversation with his wife, right? And I think about holistically, what do we want to leave behind? And as much as I want to impact this world, if my kids don't like me, then what am I doing? You know what I mean? Then
Right.
what am I doing?
Exactly.
And so it's so important that um, we allow those lessons that we've experienced to carry them forward so that we can break those curses, right? I heard you talk about having a stepdad, Mikhail, being a stepdad, right? So that generation. Um, and I've just been talking to people about the broken homes, right? And not just my generation, your generation, but those before us. And so at what point do we say enough is enough? At what point do we say, okay, we're going to figure this out a different way? And so it's just amazing that you're thinking about that, especially, um, right now, because you could be all career focused or you could be all ministry focused, but you're family focused, and then everything else is taking its appropriate place. So,
Family is huge, and I feel that that's the foundation of everything.
mm-hmm,
When you leave work, you come home to your family. When you leave ministry, you come home to your family. Those are the most important pieces to
mm-hmm,
me. I love it. Last night, my wife cooked dinner. I said, let's watch a movie. And we found, I don't think she liked the movie, but it was that quality time
mm-hmm,
for me that
mm-hmm.
meant so much. So those are pieces for me that I just love.
Yeah, it's we actually watched the movie last night too, and I was like, whew. And I picked it, and I still was like, okay, is it still on? Okay, we can do this. We can do this. But I think you're absolutely right in terms of just making that family the priority. And so, how have you been able to allow these things to be complementary to you and not in competition with each other?
Well, for me, when I think about family
Mm-hmm.
and I think about that, work life peace,
Mm-hmm.
um, I feel it compliments me because I wear family with the badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's very dear to me. A job can never compete with my family, with
Mm-hmm.
my priorities that relates to family. Because, in all honesty, I feel that jobs are temporary.
Mm-hmm.
You could be here today, gone
And gone
tomorrow.
to.
There are so many changes that are happening even right now
Mm-hmm.
as we speak. When you look at even the state of the economy, but your family is what's going to be steadfast. Your family is and that's why I think even the word says, you know, a friend will stick closer than a brother. When you think about, I live by the motto of blood makes you related, but love makes you family.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the importance of the individuals in your life, those are pieces to me that you can't pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Money can't buy a genuine relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Money can't buy, well, no, it can't. It's not genuine. It can buy the relationship, but
Right.
there's always strings attached. So for me, it's never been a competition
Mm-hmm.
because those are some of my core values.
Mm-hmm.
My family is a part of that core value where there's nothing that could even come close to it.
So now, how how are you able to effectively communicate that to, say, your job or say your spouse? If she, for example, is thinking, boy, you're spending a lot of time outside of the home doing, ministry work or what have you. How do you effectively communicate so that they can feel that they still are priority, even if?
I'm a firm believer in actions speak louder than words.
Okay.
So I try to lead with action by being present.
Mm-hmm.
We signed our son up for basketball last year. A lot of those games were on Sundays. I reached out to my pastor and I said, hey, Dad, our son's starting basketball. While I understand I serve as one of your assistant pastors here, it's important to me that I make his games. games. I thought he was going to beat me up. He said, son, I understand. He was very supportive of it. Those were pieces for me that I think Mikhail would never forget. That I think I missed maybe one game, or maybe two at most the entire season. I think I was just late, but making sure that they feel your presence, knowing that you're there. Even when I leave on work trips, it's important to me that I have some type of quality time with them before I leave. It's not you rushing home, packing, and you got to be out the door in the morning. So we have prioritized family time for us, making sure that we take, we went to Disney this year, making sure that we have those, my wife and I are going to do trips on our own, but it's important that we have that family dynamic, that we are bringing the kids with us for those things. So I don't think it's anything that maybe right now that I would have to communicate, just because I think it's very obvious. And she's actually told me more so lately, honey, it's okay if you take that call. I'm like, I'll call him back. We're doing X, Y, and Z. And there's been times where they'll call her phone. Is Thad around? I'm like, tell them they have my number. I will call them back. So I think it's, just letting your actions speak for you.
I love that. I remember when during the daytimes, I'm at work sometimes, my husband is at work, and they would call him. He wouldn't answer. We didn't work in the same company. We weren't in the same house, but they would call him and he wouldn't answer. And then they would call me and I'd say, yeah, well, if he didn't answer your call, he's not answering mine either. I don't, what you want me to do? Right. He's at work. And so being able to put those boundaries around, what we do it's so important. I remember you spoke. One of the things that I love about you is that everything that I've asked you to do, you've always said yes. You've been part, your time, your talent, and your treasure. And I really, really value that. And I had a Entrepreneur in You conference, and you came and spoke. And my students absolutely loved you. But part of your presentation was jumping out of the airplane, skydiving. So I have two questions around this. First of all, one, knowing what you know now, would you do it again? And then two, I know that there was some fear associated with that jump. Can you talk about how you've navigated fear in living this life?
So, no. I will not jump out of a perfectly good airplane ever again. At least I have no intentions on it.
Right.
But when I think about fear to me is something that I think everyone has a little bit of it. Sometimes it's the unknown, and staying in your comfort zone. That is an individual that loves to stay in his comfort zone. I don't like to be challenged too much, but I've learned that it's good for me. It's for my making. So even when I jumped out of that airplane, when we got to the edge, the guy's name was actually Thaddeus also. And I remember saying, Thad, let's not do this. And he said, oh, we're here now. We're jumping. And he's pushing forward and I'm pushing back. He was a little bit bigger than me, though. So here we go. We jumped.
Wow.
But the fear of it all, and I think this is a great question because it reminded me we have to walk by faith. It's not always what you see. Standing at the top of that airplane and looking down, it was like, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into? But the blessing in it for me is the walk of faith. Not always knowing, but trusting the process. And I know we're not in church, but I'm just a man of faith. And I just believe all things work together. So though I'm not, though I may have, fears or things that are making me a little bit anxious, anxiety, I always remember who I serve. And I always remember that, I can do anything that I put my mind to. We can do all things through Christ. So it's important for me with navigating life, keeping my eye on the prize. What am I trying to accomplish? Even if it gets a little scary, how am I going to get there? I went through a season last year where I was in a particular role that honestly I wasn't qualified for. I really shouldn't have been doing the role. But I was blessed to have a servant leader who saw something in me, who continued to challenge me. It was uncomfortable. I would go into some of these meetings with some of these executives and I would be like, okay, Thaddeus. Talk to yourself before the meeting. Make sure you have everything ready to go. But then I would have a debrief with my leader and he would say, you did excellent. You got us through this upgrade. Everything was perfect. So even in those moments where I felt like I couldn't have done it, I was successful with it. So it's, again, I think even in those fearful moments, surrounding yourself with the right people. God sent an angel. And that was my manager at that time, who was also a part of the same faith, who really encouraged me and gave me strategy, direction to help me move some of the obstacles, the fear, the anxiety out of the way, but say, hey, put a plan together and this is how you're going to get there.
I love that. That is, people underestimate strategic planning for not only for work, but for their lives.
Yes.
And I think if we took the time to put literal strategic plans together for our life, we'll be better off. I do that. So I'm a proponent. I know what it's like. There's so much value in it. I have enjoyed this time so much, and I could just keep asking you questions and learning from you. But as we're wrapping up, kind of the theme or the premise of this podcast is to embrace, to empower, and to elevate. And when you think about those words, as we are wrapping up, what would you want people to know about that? What would your final thoughts be?
I would definitely say embrace change. Life is always changing. I think if we look at what our country went through with the pandemic, a lot of times it's easy to stay in the box. It's easy to stay in your comfort zone, but embrace the good, the bad, and the ugly as it comes. And when you think about being empowered, set yourself up with the tools that you need to be successful. It may be the people that's in your corner. It may be the tools that you use at work, whatever that is, put yourself in a place for success. And then when you think about elevating, I think it's huge I want to take this to the next level. I'm not going to stay here. It's okay to have done certain things a certain way for the last 5 years, but we got to take this a step higher. We want to continue to grow this. We want to continue to evolve it. So embracing the change, really focusing on whatever that is, however that looks for your life, however that looks for your career. But I think it's huge to think about, how do you take everything you do to the next level? You may be doing excellent, but how can I get better? And that's what I strive for every day, getting better.
You know what? And what's so funny is that as you're saying that, I'm thinking this is absolutely what you do every single day. Like, you are the motto. I think your face should be my logo.
You're funny.
But I want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for I want to say nuggets, but I feel like they're boulders of wisdom that you've offered, not only to me, but to the community that will be observing this. So thank you again. And for all of you that are joining, thank you. And please live life empowered. Take care. Goodbye.